Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer. This is their part number 5010-457-652, plain bearing, 5-knuckle, full mortise, wide throw steel base, 4.5 by 7 removable pin, satin chrome hinge is what this is. That's quite a mouthful, so let's start to dissect the part number. The 5010 means a variety of things. It's going to mean that it is a full mortise hinge, in no particular order. It's a full mortise hinge. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves there that when the leaves are brought parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame and allow that margin between the door jamb and the hinge style of the door. It means that it is a 5-knuckle hinge. You can see why we call it a 5-knuckle hinge. It's also a plain bearing hinge. There are no bearing packets in here at all, and that it is also standard weight. The leaf thickness is 134 thousandths of an inch thick. Also means that it's wide throw. Now this is a 4.5 by 7, and with a hinge like this it's easy to guess which dimension is which. It is important to note, however, that a hinge that is 4.5 by 4 or 5 by 4.5, the first dimension is always the height. So this is 4.5 by 7. It's important to know that that first dimension is the height because, again, if you get a 5 by 4.5, it's really important to know that you're not prepping the door and frame for 4.5 inch tall hinges. That the 5 is the height dimension. Okay, means that it's steel based. Hinge is made of steel in a set with a satin chrome finish. Tells you that it's square corner, that it has a removable pin. That pin can be driven out and simply pulled out, and if you needed to reverse the hinge pin, you could remove that button as well, should you need to. Generally, I can't fathom a reason why you would, except that maybe you want the logo pointed towards the top. We'll talk about that at the end of the video. So we've talked about the 5010, the -457, that's the size, and then the 652, that means two things. It means it's made of steel and that it's satin chrome. Now, there is a link below this video to a document called Cut Sheet, and let's go over that now, or if you'd like to open that document. It's a fairly generic document in that it will work for wide throw hinges as well as standard hinges. And you can look at the dimensional properties, which are important because it will give you the locations of the screw holes. And this is what's called a template pattern. Okay. Template pattern is by far the common pattern, but if you're unsure if the location of the screw holes matches what you have, use that document Cut Sheet because it will give you the vertical and horizontal locations of the holes. And speaking of those holes, screws are included. You'll be able to do a wood or a machine sort of installation. You get 8 of each screw, okay, in a complementary finish. They're also made of steel. The lower left-hand area of that cut sheet will show you different columns. Steel hinges, brass or bronze, and then stainless steel hinges. You can see how that last digit changes. So in our hinge, we have a 0 in the 4th location. That means it's made of steel. If you change that to 1, it'd be brass or bronze. If you change that to 2, it'd be stainless steel. So you can change the base material, and that might be very important for you. Maybe you're in a coastal area and you simply want a hinge that is not as prone to rusting as steel will be. You can also see how that first digit changes as well. The 5 to the 8 to the BB to the LB. Now the 5 and the 8, the only difference between those hinges, 5 is a 5-knuckle hinge and the 8 is a 3-knuckle hinge. The BB, when you have a BB in a 5000 series hinge, will give you ball bearing packets, and on a standard weight hinge like this, you'll have a bearing packet here and you'll have another one down here. Then finally, you've got the LB, which is only for 3-knuckle hinges. That is a concealed lube bearing sort of construction that is specific to Bommer that allows for actually a significantly greater resistance to friction at the bearing points when compared to a ball bearing type hinge. If you have an especially heavy door, and while wide throw hinges are not load rated, you'd want to consider Bommer's LB series of heavyweight hinges because that hinge is significantly greater at being able to handle a heavier door based on the much lower capacity of the friction buildup on ball bearings. And then as that column changes, we've discussed all the changes of how that can be done. Then the rest of the table is really just changing the A dimension based on the width of the hinge. Now, why would you use such a hinge? Well, a wide throw hinge is going to be used primarily because you need to get the door out and around some wall condition. So a standard hinge is going to end up here. Well, this hinge, if it was 4.5, 4.5, this hinge is moving that vertical axis of pivoting out an additional 1.25 inches. 7 minus 4.5, 2.5, divided by 2. You're moving it out 1.25 inches, but that will give you a 2.5 inch additional amount of room when compared to a standard 4.5, 4.5 hinge. Why might you need that? Well, because you want the door to go to 180 degrees, and the fact that the CMU block wall, which is 7 5/8, and you've got a 5 3/4 jam depth frame, which is centered in the end of that wall. Not saying that that's the scenario that you'd need 7-inch, because you could probably make 6-inch work in that scenario. But that would be an application where you'd say, I need a wide throw, because I don't want that door stuck at 110 degrees. I want to get it open, and I want to clear it all the way back around where you can hold it tight to the wall to get it out of the way of the opening. Might be very appropriate for a loading dock scenario. Last week I sold a door unit to a child care facility, like a pre-K child care facility, and ownership wanted to get that door out and open, tuck it way back. A door closer will handle 180 degrees. There's generally not a problem with a 180 degree door opening, provided that the hinge can do it, and that there's no conflict between the door, the frame, and the wall, or an application perhaps like it's residential and you've got shutters applied to the outside of the opening and you need to have that work. Or there's another scenario. Imagine if when you're standing on the pull side of the door and you run your hand over the face of the door and the frame, the door is generally pushed in just a little bit, like 3/32 of an inch. That's called the inset. Well, imagine if the inset was 2-inch. Not common, but you do see it. Older homes, where it might be a home that's 100 years old, 3-story, the first floor wall thickness is extreme to bear the weight of everything above it. And you'll see wide throw hinges used because those doors in that 18-inch deep frame are actually centered in the opening. Okay, so that'd be a common area where you might see a wide throw hinge. That's a gross example or an exaggerated example, but a real example. So whatever or why ever you might need to consider a wide throw hinge, and by the way, an extended lip strike plate might go hand in hand with a wide throw hinge, which we can help you with as well. A wide throw hinge allows you to account for scenarios. Now, wide throw hinges are used in lots of cases of applications that are really only restricted by imagination. Quickly, the neatest use that I've seen is a loading dock in New York City, up just Central Park South. There were 4 doors. In the first door, there were 4 panels, and they were all hinged together. The first panel would fold in this way, then the next set would fold in this way, and then they could take it and fold the entire unit back. And now, if you've been to New York City, there's no alleys. Space is at an ultra premium. So the ability for them to be able to use wide throw hinges in a ever increasing dimension as each set of doors needed to fold against each other was a fantastic example of using your imagination to solve a problem. Great wide throw hinge application as well. Obviously, this hinge will be available in those combinations we talked about earlier, but more specifically, you can do this steel-based hinge in all of the architectural finishes you can do on steel. Prime coat, black japanned, your brasses, your bronze, your chromes, your nickels, your polished, your satin, oil rub bronze naturally, then those different base materials we talked about earlier. Security features, this is a removable pin. You could easily drive that out. You don't want a removable pin necessarily if you have a door that swings out, because I could easily pull that pin out and then remove the door. If it's an outswing door, you're probably going to want to order this as a non-removable hinge, which we can help you with. It's a different part number. Or maybe a security stud sort of feature where there's actually a stud that's welded onto this hinge and then a hole is drilled here so that when it closes, that stud actually protrudes into the other leaf so that if you were to drive the pin out, you still can't tip the door out because that stud is preventing it from being pulled out. Occasionally I have people ask me for radiused corners, 1/4 inch, 5/8, that can all be accommodated. Lots of options. Electrification sometimes is possible on a hinge like this, etc., etc. Okay. Finally, there's a logo, that stamp there I'd mentioned earlier, made in USA. That's a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I, to represent them. Finally, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Bommer products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. I'm partial to Bommer, and it's because they're exceptional. Their quality is phenomenal. The amount of business that we do with Bommer, because they are a domestically manufactured product, but the entire vertical column of sourcing from them is American in origin. The steel itself is domestically manufactured, and as a result, regardless of your personal opinion on the matter, Bommer gets a lot of work because of that. Whether it's opinion like mine, or whether it's military in nature, or a must be domestically manufactured and no sub sort of scenario. They do a great job. They've got an excellent engineering department. If you have a question on something, they're just really, really, really nice people. If you have any questions on the Bommer 5010-457 and a 652 finish wide throw hinge, or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.